All right, Wallen Augustin, thank you, sir, for being a part of the podcast. How you doing?
I'm good. It's a pleasure to be on. I've been admiring from afar, so it's a pleasure to be on, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And so for those that don't know Wallen, he is the co-host of the Savvy Dialogue podcast with his lovely wife Jane. But I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Wallen, can you just kind of do a brief intro of yourself, maybe what you do, what you enjoyed doing, and where people might be able to find you on social?
Yeah, absolutely. So, little history about me. I was born and raised in South Florida. South Florida is completely different than the rest of Florida. Just had to make sure I made that note. I come from a Haitian background. My mother, my father, they're Haitian. Grew up in Florida. Did like literally my entire 18 years there, and then ended up going to college at Adrian College. It's like a little small liberal arts school, southeast Michigan. Played football there, and got my degree with for communications, which was amazing. Initially went there for business, and then I was like, you know what? Like, I don't need to have a business degree to like start my own business. And I had a passion for video and film and photography. And that's something that I've always done and I've always had a love for. So I went into communication and it was an amazing experience because it was a liberal arts school. Got to do a lot of different things, broadcasting, journalism, PR, doing a lot of different things in marketing as well. Took a ton of business courses there as well. And then ended up graduating. Guess I'll date myself a little bit. Graduated in 2015, and got into the real world. Moved to Maryland to stay with my brother for a while as I looked for a job, and ended up getting my first gig in Maryland. First stint was working for a lottery vending company, which was a interesting way to get into marketing and into that space. Very like interesting world. It's like their own thing. They have like their own lottery magazines and stuff that we had to create ads for. So that was an interesting way to get started. And then shortly after that, I became a social media specialist at Crosby Marketing, which is where we met. I'll never forget, man, the first day I walk in, Jeff's in the little corner. I sat right next to you. So that was an awesome experience, being able to, dive into social media, social listening, learning a ton of different things. But while I was there, that's when I started Wallen Digital, which is my production company that I still have to this day. Looks a little different now due to the pandemic and everything, but that's when I started that because I saw there was a need for the video for small businesses, because I was pretty in the community in Maryland at that point. I was like here for about 3 years, and there's a ton of small businesses that were doing really well, and I wanted to be able to offer not only my marketing expertise with social media and other digital marketing spaces, but the video aspect of it, where I feel a lot of businesses didn't have that expertise. And then shortly after, I left Crosby to go to 2U, which is an ed tech company where I work there now as a marketing manager, and just really diving into the marketing space, but also working it with Wallen Digital and doing all of that. So it's a little quick synopsis. If you want to find me, you can find me at Wallen Augustin on all social media platforms. It's pretty easy, and Savvy Dialogue.
Yeah. So before we get into Savvy Dialogue, so you just how old is Savvy Dialogue? Few months?
Yeah, a few months, like 3 months.
Awesome. And I want to dive into more of the podcast that you and your wife co-host in a moment. But going back to Wallen Digital, I love that starting. It sounds like you started that to help, like you said, help the small businesses in your community, help them up their video game and their marketing game. So talk a little bit about just, what it was like starting that. I mean, what was it like? How did you get your first clients or your first bit of business, and what kind of work were you doing at first, and what kind of time did you have to put in?
Yeah, it was really scary to start because when you're in that space, that marketing space where you're working with your colleagues every day and you have your friends and this is what you do, you're the marketing person. to go off and venture and onto your own and do your own thing while still, having your 9 to 5 was a little like gut wrenching to start. But I saw a need. I saw that people needed it. People needed that expertise in video marketing, and I decided to do it. I had all my equipment that I had, like I've accumulated from like through the years of like, I always had to have, I don't think I've ever gone without having a camera. I've always had a camera. It has to be around. There's never too far. It's never, literally never too far. And I saw a need, and I wanted to get in there and be able to provide that need. And the reason I saw that need is because I was in the community, right? I was going to coffee shops. I was going to the barber shops. I was there, and I was talking to those business owners, and they're like, yeah, like you do photography, you do video. And I was like, yeah, I do that stuff. And you do marketing. And I'm giving them advice as I'm getting my hair cut. I'm like, hey, you should, if you're going to do social, you should really think about doing this right here. Like this will really help your strategy. And, video right now, the algorithm, you may not know about the algorithm, but the algorithm is really favoring videos right now. Like what Instagram is doing now, they're adding long form video content. It's going to do better. And they want those apps and those social media platforms want to keep users on those platforms as long as possible. Video is a way to do that. And, as they're like, oh, like, that's great. But like, I just, I don't have time to do a video, or like, can I use my iPhone? It's like, you can, but is that what your brand needs? Right. Like you don't want to be that person that just kind of just throws a cheesy video together and say, this is my video. Right. So I saw that need, and I was giving the advice anyway. So I was like, I should do this. And I was like, I think at one point the barbershop, the team was like, hey, we should pay you for this. I was like, you're right. You should. Yeah, you definitely should.
So you were doing it for free for a little bit.
Yeah, I was doing it for free for a little bit, and just kind of saying like, this is like, let me just give you advice, because I want to see them do well. Like I go there, and they're good people. I'm like going to, my favorite breakfast brunch spot every Saturday. And I'm like, hey, like you do good on the Saturdays, but I'm never here on the weekdays. How's it going? Right. And I'm like, I saw your Facebook page. You don't really post on there often. Right. And I'm kind of telling them things. They're like, can you come on? And like, they're like, yeah, we want to, yeah, we'll pay you. Don't worry. And then I was like, all right, let me just make this official. And so the way I started off was just getting in there and talking to these people and doing it for free. And then they gave me referrals afterwards. And I'm like, yo, like I have some other person that you can go work for. And then I'm like doing salons. I'm doing all types of different businesses. So now like the portfolio is growing based off the referrals. So I'm like, okay, I should put like a name to this. Let me make it like as easy as possible. Like I called it me. It's like Wallen Digital, not very original, but it is original because it's my name. But I wanted to make it easy for people to know that it was me, and I was the one that was going to be helping them out with all their digital needs, but really focusing on the video production side of it. And I've created a website, and now I started doing marketing, and then that's kind of how that all kind of continued to grow. Now it's a little different in 2020, but that was the way that I really got started, and I saw the real need for video production and the marketing aspect of it. So I guess some people call it video marketing, which I like that name.
It's interesting. I was talking one of the earlier shows. I talked to a gentleman by the name of Chris Carson, and he runs a video production company out of Cincinnati, Ohio. And one thing I noticed about him, and we talked about it, was just how much information he gave away for free online, like how he did his business and all of that. And and what's worked for him, and how much even just the details, like how much he charges and stuff like that, just to help other people in the community, and like other video marketers or other, video producers. It's interesting that kind of, it works in business in different ways, right? I mean, the work you were doing for free for a long time, it might have been hard work, but it led to better things, more clients, more business, eventually led to the paid work. And I think it's Gary Vaynerchuk and the thank you economy, and most of his stuff that he posts online, he's always talking about how much to do some of your greatest work and do some of the stuff you're best at for free, because it'll eventually pay off.
Yeah, it especially when you're starting off, you have no real credibility yet, right? It's like, and you have to put yourself in those business owners' position, right, as well. Like, I'm going to give you money to do something that I have no idea how you will perform it, right? And it's hard to sell that with people, and it's hard to like build a portfolio with just saying like, hey, like, can pay me X amount of money to do this for you. And sometimes it's a lot of money that you're asking somebody to pay for. So I think that when you can also build that trust, right, and you can do something for free, kind of show them like, hey, I do have what it takes, and let's build my portfolio, and let me also show you that I can help you. And once you're able to do that with those business owners and those people that you're working with, they'll also refer you to someone else. Right. And that's like what you talked about, the thank you call. Like, thank you for all the great work that you did for me. Let me refer you to somebody else because I know you're great. You're awesome to work with. You produce amazing quality and you added real value to me that I didn't even have to pay for. So there's that psychology in it. Like, this was free and it was great. So somebody else could really use you. And I want to thank you for what you did. So like, here you go. Here's this thing that you can go ahead and do. And they know that you're going to prove them right. So I think that aspect of it is really important. And that's important for a lot of young people getting started or people starting their new businesses. You have to have something to build off of. You're not going to roll out of bed, start a business and be rolling in money, which, to be honest, people say this a lot, that you shouldn't start a business to make money, right? Which is important. You still need to make money. Like let's not kid ourselves. But when you have that passion behind it of like why you're doing it, right? My passion was like, I wanted to help you. I wanted to help these small businesses with something that I was fortunate enough to have learned and understood how they could work the complexities. And they're business owners. They don't have time to, be like thinking about marketing right now on top of, payroll and getting like the inventory that they need. There's a lot of things that goes into that. And I think I can add value by just being able to give it to you like on kind of quickly. And you can learn that I am pretty good at what I do, and we can continue to like have business moving forward.
And it's a bonus, and I think it's also, I guess I shouldn't say bonus, but you also had a passion. Not only did you have a passion for helping the communities or the businesses in your community, but you had the passion for video photography. I mean, you truly enjoy doing that stuff, right?
Yeah, it was a joy, right? I would go to work and you were working, you're doing what you're supposed to do, and there's a joy for that. But afterwards, you would go do something else to help somebody else, and it would be really fun, right? I'm like, all right, let me draw out my storyboard. Let me make sure that let me like get into that business and understand what their target audience is, what's important to them, because I'm taking an aspect of like my 9 to 5 and applying it to the photography and the video side of it. So now I know what your audience is. I know what's important for you, but I also know how to create this visual masterpiece, right? Like I know how to create like a visually appealing marketing asset that can help you in the long run. So it was great. And I was learning on the go as well. Right. So like, as I'm creating things and I'm diving into that, that part of the business, which is like the videography part of it, I'm learning, you learn 3-point lighting in school, but then you get into different situations. You're like, this isn't going to work here. I have to kind of figure it out and do these new things. And when you're doing it for free, right, it's a little bit easier to do things like that. Right. And now like I'm compared to 4 years ago, when I first started Wallen Digital, I am in a different space now, right? I have this expertise. If something happens and I'm like, oh, there's the sun setting on the west here, or excuse me, the sun setting on the west here. I need to know how to like completely change this look and make sure that I get what I need for my client. So it really helps when you do have a passion for it, because it gets really tough, right? And then having to go 9 to 5 and then work all the way into like 2 a.m. that night, right? To get something created for a client, it gets really tough. But when you do have that passion for it, it's fun, because there's nothing. I think a lot of people will tell you this. Most people don't enjoy editing like for like 5-8 hours on end, like just literally just on Final Cut or Adobe Premiere, just like cutting and slicing and, oh gosh, I'm thinking
Hearing the
about
same music over and over again.
yeah, over and over again. Keyframes. Oh, keyframes are so tedious, right? So like nobody really enjoys that. I mean, some people do, but I really enjoy seeing the end product, right? I know that all the work that I'm putting into it right now is going to be something amazing and exactly what the client wants most of the time. There are revisions, right? But those are things that like I like seeing. I really enjoy, putting in the work, and then once the work is done, seeing the final product and seeing the client happy with what you gave them. That's what really helps. And if you're not passionate about it and you don't like it, those 8 hours, 10 hours, 20, 30 hours you do editing, they seem terrible.
Totally. And so how you talked about how it looks, Wallen Digital looks a little different now, especially in 2020. How has it evolved, and what does it look like today?
Yeah. So I was used to kind of just running and gunning it back in the day, right? If somebody wanted something or they wanted to have a quote or they were interested, I'd be like, yeah, that's great. Let's meet at this coffee shop. Let's speak. Like let me come to your place of business and we can really talk and we can really get nitty gritty about the detail. I can see the space. I was able to really get in there and really have good face to face, because I feel like it is better when I have that face to face with people and I'm able to be in their element and see how they're running their business and be able to take that and apply it to what I'm doing, the work that I'm doing for them. But 2020 has been a little bit different with seeing people face to face. So it's been really challenging. When it first happened, like March, April, people thought it was going to last it wasn't going to last as long as it was going to last. And now here we are and about to be 2021 in a couple of days. So it was really scary, not really knowing. And I was really blessed and fortunate to have another job, and like this was like something I was doing that I could lean on. And I really like felt for some of those smaller businesses that I was working with, and I tried to reach out and help with it, like with what I could during that time. And now when I'm doing work, I'm not in the space like I used to be. We're doing these things, right? Or we're going over Zoom, over, Google Hangouts, and kind of talking about the business and what we want to do. And it's a little bit business slowed, and it's still slow because I work with those small businesses. It's not the same for everybody. And I think that's important for people to remember too. Like those large corporations, especially those tech companies, they're going to do good. Like they're going to be fine. It's those small businesses that are really hit really hard by this, and having to be really creative. And it's been really inspiring to see how people have been innovative and creative and really helping those small businesses really find that momentum that they need to keep going and to keep their doors open. So like the things that I was able to do back in the day, and I'm having conversations with business owners. I'm like, what can I do to help you now? Right. It's not about, like, let's not talk about how much you need for this. Like you were there for me, when I needed it. Like, how can I help you? And Wallen Digital is like really different, right? I'm not doing as much of the work that I used to do. It's more of a consulting basis now, right? Like it's really different now, right? I'm like, look, listen, you don't need to have me come and set up the lights and have this nice camera do this. Let's be creative, right? Like live streaming, which all about. Like start live streaming, start doing some of that, right? Start documenting and telling people what your day-to-day looks like. Let me help you set it up, right? All right, bring your laptop with you. Show me your space. Let me help you set it up. All right, did you buy those lights that I told you to buy on Amazon? All right, good. They don't need to be fancy. Let's just get everything you need to get started. So it's been more of a consulting role now, instead of, being able to go out and actually film. And a lot of people are still going out and filming, and you can do that with those restrictions. But I found it more effective because, one, I'm cheaper that way, right? Like it's easier and it's nimble, and it's easier for them to kind of learn as well, right? And it's that saying, right? Don't give a person a fish, teach them how to fish, right? Like this is what you can do now for those larger projects where you want to put some money into some ads and really push that forward. Like I can come in and I can still give you that help that you need, but it's really, really more of a consulting role now, and I'm giving them the real marketing aspect of it, which is why it's shifted so much now, right? Like my job is the Wallen Digital is really different in that sense, where I'm not doing the video production as much as I was with the day-to-day, but I've shifted and pivoted into a marketing role, helping them with some of their marketing needs, and also having ways to apply video into that as well.
I didn't know that. And that's so cool that you were able to just kind of shift like that. And I guess if you wanted to sustain Wallen Digital, I mean, it sounds like at least through this time, you had to be agile, right? You had to think like, okay, what can I do to help now? I'm not, like you said, some people are going and shooting, and that's fine, but some people may not be comfortable doing that, on site shoots, and that's fine. But, you were kind of flexible and just kind of have figured out a new way to help these folks.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to be, right. And if you're not nimble, specifically during this time, you're probably not going to be around for a long time, right? If your motto is we need to do in-person stuff all the time, and depending on what state you're in, you're not going to do very well, right? There's consumer, like, if the consumer does not feel safe, if they don't have the demand for what you're giving at the time, like you're not going to get people to come in, right? And I think that's really important for people to think about. And when you're creating your business and you're running your business, you need to figure out that, like, a great way is like looking at Amazon. Amazon gets into every little thing that they can get. Like, that was a bookstore in 1998, right? It was a bookstore, and they're huge in the cloud computing space now, right? They're huge in every e-commerce space there is. And that's them continuously trying to evolve and add different. It's like diversifying your portfolio, right? And that's what everyone needs to think about. Obviously, niches are important, but you always got to think about how to get better. Like, Apple is creating a electric car now. Like, like there's tons of different things happening in spaces where you have to pivot and continue to add, diversify, and add to your repertoire.
And now, speaking of pivoting, Savvy Dialogue is now first. I don't know if was your podcast. Is that, I guess, so talk to me a little bit about what Savvy Dialogue is, and was that kind of meant to be an extension of Wallen Digital, or is this kind of like a new fun project for you guys?
It's definitely a new fun project for us, because when I went to school, I was a producer of a radio station. So we had a local radio station that we had within the college, and I was a producer, and I also had my own show. So I remember creating hot clocks and, all the things that, getting on the radio, like your radio voice and all the things that you needed to learn to be in that radio space. And you know what I'm talking about. You took those classes, right?
Yes. Yeah. Real quick tangent. Yeah. When I was on Wallens and Jane's podcast, I talked about my time at the college TV station. I did news, and we had a show called Face Off where we were kind of like taking off the PTI format on ESPN, and I know all about it. And you it's just, if any college folks are listening, those students thinking of getting into their college TV or radio stations, I mean, by far some of the most fun and great experiences you can get if you're interested in getting in the field.
Yeah. And for people that don't know, Jeff has some great throwback videos of him doing sports anchoring and announcing. You all should definitely check that out. And I'm sure he'll share some with you all later as well. But it's amazing. You have so many great throwbacks from your college days, and you're like, I did that, and it was a great time. It was a really great time for sure. But it was amazing being able to do that, and this is why it's important to think about pivoting and looking at the landscape. We weren't like, when we were in school, we weren't able to just hop on a radio station. We would have to go to like a huge radio station within our local communities, or syndicated radio station as an intern to kind of hopefully get on the radio eventually. And it was slim. It was hard. It's kind of like, I'm sure, Jeff, we both wanted to be on ESPN eventually, right? Like when we were in college, we're like, we're definitely gonna be on ESPN. I'm being next Stuart Scott, like Scott Van Pelt, like that's who we're gonna be, right? And it was hard, right? When you start to learn the reality of it, you're like, oh, there's only 20 people that do that at ESPN, and there's 50 of us in this class that want to do the same thing, right? And it's tough. And now with, shout out to Steve Jobs creating podcasts, who would have thought that it would have became what it is now? And it's still on the rise. It's still getting better. It's still growing. And it's giving people like us a voice to kind of just get on there and do what we always wanted to do. And we have a specific experience that could really help us succeed in that space. So as I was thinking about all that, I'm like, I have a ton to talk about, and my wife has a ton to talk about, but also understanding that knowledge for me, I think knowledge is important. That's why I love your podcast, and I love what you're doing, right? You're getting and having these conversations with people, and you're learning. I've learned so much from listening to your podcast and watching from different people and how they've gone about their journeys. I think knowledge is important. I think you should always be striving to learn every day. I try to read a new book as much as I can. I'm on YouTube. YouTube is like the largest search engine, and you can learn so much on YouTube, right? If I just got a power drill, I'm on YouTube learning how to use the power drill, right? So
Yes.
knowledge is always important till the day that you're not on this earth anymore. You should always be striving to learn. And we wanted to create a podcast where we could do that. Now, finding the format to do that was like, I remember when we started to try to figure out what the podcast was going to be. There's like so many different formats you can do, but that was something that we really wanted to do. We wanted to give knowledge to people from everyday, like our conversations with everyday people, right? We don't want to get, the big celebrities on the podcast. Like, I learned the most from, and like I mentioned earlier, those small businesses, right? When I was in there and I was talking to people, I learned so much just talking to people that were running their business every day. They're practical, right? It's not like they have millions of followers and it's just kind of easy, kind of just do it because you're popular. They're practical, great advice. And that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to create a platform to have those people have a voice and be able to spread their knowledge from some of the trials and tribulations they've gone through, some of the things they learned, and being able to share that with everybody else to get the same type of perspective that we got.
Yeah. And so, you and I have talked about this before that, with podcasting, I think obviously podcasts have blown up, and I know you're talking about it as like a fun side project. I only think that podcasts are going to grow or keep growing and continue to be able to help people's businesses, and if they so choose. And it's not that hard to get started, and it's not that costly when you look at the grand scheme. I mean, it's so easy to get a podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Like, I thought it was easy, but I never really understood until I actually posted. Thank you, Wallen, for the encouragement along the way, by the way. But yeah, I mean, so talk about, like, I just want to get an idea of what equipment you have and how you are posting, because I want to get across the point that, like, it doesn't take much.
Yeah, it's extremely easy. And the cost of entry is $0 for most people, because you all already have a phone, you all probably have headphones, and you all probably have internet or data connection. And if you already have those things, it costs you nothing to get in. So as I was researching it, I found Anchor, which I think we both use, and Anchor is a great platform to kind of just put your stuff in and put your podcast in and kind of send it everywhere. And it's really simple to use. But Anchor also has this integration into it where you can literally take your phone, right? This thing right here, download the app, hit record, and record your entire podcast on your phone. And once you're done, you hit send, and you're everywhere. Everyone can hear you, which is amazing, right? Again, cost of entry is $0. And you'll have a pretty good podcast. It'll be good quality. These mics don't sleep on the iPhone mics. Don't sleep on the iPhone cameras, right? iPad, don't sleep on them. They're great. Your computer. These things are great tools to use. And technology has evolved so much to where they can put these amazing quality cameras and microphones in these small devices where you can be nimble. Now, if you got the chance to interview someone in Iowa that's amazing, you can get in your car, drive to Iowa, bring your phone, and you're good. You can record that podcast with your phone. So that is awesome. And being able to kind of just get in there with like an Anchor is free. And then if you also want to do ads and have some type of ad revenue come in, you can use Anchor as well. Anchor, and people don't know this with the podcast, because a lot of people are like still like YouTube. I want to be a YouTuber. The cost of entry into a podcast is low. but the returns on ad revenue is higher. So the CPM on YouTube, I think, is like, depending on what kind of ads you're getting in the content that you're creating, can be as low as like 20, like 20, from like 20 to 30 cents to like $2 or something around there. For podcasts, I think for every like 1,000 listens you get, you can legitimately get $30 for every 1,000 listen, right? I'm going off of memory. So don't fact right now. But it is a significant higher ratio to make money on the podcast when you start having ad revenue. And Anchor makes it easy. They're gonna take their cut, but it's a larger profit margin than YouTube is. Profit margin isn't the right word, but I'm using it, right? So as you think about those things, the cost of entry is smaller because on YouTube you got to have a video camera, you got to, which again, you can use you can use your phone, but you got to have like a non-linear editing software. Usually people are using Final Cut Pro, or they're using Adobe Premiere, or you can also use your phone now because Apple's adding those into their software and their hardware as well. But those things, it takes more time. You have to do a lot. Once we get done with this, we can hit, all right, that was pretty much straight through. Put in the title, put in your description, and you're done, right? And you still got to put in your title and your description on YouTube. But now on YouTube, there's a thing called a thumbnail, and that's all the rage, right? It's all about the thumbnail. The thumbnail is like 90% of it, right? And it's just a lot easier to kind of get into the podcast world. But also, you don't need all this equipment. Now, I took a little extra, right? I like the quality. I like having the thing that gives me the control over the podcast, because that's just what I learned, right? I want to have real control over the stuff that I'm creating. So I went ahead and I talked it over with my wife. I'm like, do you want to do this? So she's like, yeah, I want to do this. I was like, can I buy a roadcaster, please? Pretty please. And yeah, she gave me the blessings, and I got a roadcaster, right? And it's amazing. And the first time I actually heard about the roadcaster was Jeff. So thank you, Jeff. And they came out 2017-ish, 2016, somewhere around
something
there,
like that, yeah.
And it sounded amazing, but I was like, there's no way I'm gonna be able to get that. I don't have anything to do with it now. But now I see the use case for it, right? Because I have a lot of control. Everything is in this little thing here that I can take everywhere with me, right? And it's relatively inexpensive. Now, I'm not gonna say like I think it was 500 around there, 400, 300
for what it does, though.
Yeah, for what it does. Because back in the day, when we were doing our thing in college, those huge studios cost thousands of dollars, tons of knobs everywhere, and all of these things that if you break, you don't want to be that student that breaks the equipment, right? Yeah. So it was a ton of money to be able to do anything in the radio, right? And then you have to get a tower, and you got to do there's tons of stuff. And now with the internet and this, like I have basically, you have 7 channels, right? You have 7 channels. You have your XLR inputs and outputs. You have 5 headphone jacks, right? Like headphone jacks where people can hear what's going on as well. You have Bluetooth connection. You have a sound pad where you can have your music going. There's so much that you have in this thing for the price that usually would cost you at least $5,000 back in the day. And now you can create quality content. You have, Apex and all of these processors in here to help with the audio as well. Then with Rode goes ahead and makes these Rode mics that are $100, where those Shure mics were like almost $1,000. They're like $500 to $1,000, and the higher you go, the more expensive they are. Now they're understanding that they need to get into this space a little bit better, and they're making cheaper options to get folks in the podcast space. But this might cost $100, right? And it's not as much as buying a full, DSLR or mirrorless camera, buying a mic that you can plug into that camera. It's a lot easier to get into that space and really be able to create quality content.
Absolutely. When I first started this thing, I'm only 5 episodes in as we record this, but I was using an old USB mic, I think that I got off Amazon for $20. Had that, and I have this little adapter here that allows me to plug in USB, and that also connects to my iPad. So I was plugging the mic directly into my iPad using Anchor, and sounded great. And I just, because I enjoy this, and I think you're the same. Like, we can geek out on equipment all day, so. And so I quickly was like, I need a new mic because I don't know, I just want something cool. And so I just bought this Blue Yeti mic, but even, I mean, this is, to me, super high quality, and it was like $120. So, and again, I'm just plugging this directly into my computer, and we're able to have this conversation with high quality audios. And another guest I had on not too long ago, Jordan Syatt, he's big in the fitness coaching world, online fitness coaching world. He has the Jordan Syatt mini podcast, and I mean, hundreds of thousands of downloads. I know, and I don't know the estimate, but it's way up there, and huge following on social media. I mean, he was telling me, like, I used to take my phone and just sit like this and record all of my podcasts that way. And just recently invested in a new mic and things like that. So it doesn't, that, like you said, the things that just the iPhone has available, and people say this all the time, it's so just truly remarkable, the quality internally in that thing with the camera and the mic. It's it is not very hard to get into. And I think it's I thought, even with COVID, or I thought with COVID, that maybe people wouldn't be listening to podcasts, because just me personally, I would listen to my podcast on my way to work. Like, I had a long commute, and it was a great time for me to listen to books, podcasts, and all that stuff. But that's just me. And I know, a lot of people have podcasts rolling all day, just, on their Echo devices as they're working. And, video podcasts, I think, are going to start to be a thing. You see, like, with Spotify, with Joe Rogan and stuff like that, like that's probably going to, make even more of an appearance. I mean, what do you think? What's next for podcasting?
Man, so the sky's the limit, right? For podcasts, just off of what I've seen, right? And the explosion. So just then, I like to make the joke, I call it a panoramic. During the panoramic, which is the pandemic, I heard that from Gunnar, and I thought it was hilarious. But during that time, right? I think that, and again, I don't remember the numbers, but the explosion in new podcasts being created during this time, because most people were home. They're like, again, the cost of entry is zero, right? So during that time, people were able to kind of just create their podcast, kind of talk about what was going on. And I think a lot of people that you see on YouTube are like, content, like, document your life, right? And no better time to document your life than in quarantine. I make this joke with my friends that, when I get older and we have children, and you're talking to the younger generation, they're like, it's a snowstorm, I can't go out and play. I'm like, let me tell you about 2020, right? like you have no idea, right? And when you can go ahead and document that, and what your journey is, and what that's like as you're going through that journey, that's an amazing opportunity for folks to really discuss what they're feeling during this time, right? And the explosion of new podcasts during that time was amazing. Now, weird statistic that I have, I think most podcasts people stop producing episodes after episode 7. So Jane and I's goal for Savvy Dialogue is like, let's get past 7, right? And let's keep going, right? And we were able to do that. And so there's an explosion, but it is work, right? You still have to put in some work. There's a lot of things that have to go into it. You have to have topics to talk about, and it can get kind of cumbersome, right? There's a lot of, it's like with anything you do, it takes some work. But I think that with podcasts as an industry, it's only going to continue to get better. Apple was the one that created podcasts and didn't realize how much share they had, and maybe they did realize how much share they had because everybody was just using Apple Podcasts, and then Spotify was like, I see an opportunity here because they had their whole issue with, the music streaming with, Taylor Swift and some of those other artists, and it's a lot more money every time you get a stream. You have to get a pretty big check to those record labels, right? You have to there's a lot of licensing that goes into that. But with podcasts, you can keep someone on a platform for 3 hours, and people don't see, like, when you really understand the value of that, you have the ability of keeping someone. And I know there's like the social media documentary on Netflix that people are like going, like, that's all the craze. They want to keep you on their apps and their platform because that's how they make money. So the more you're on there, the more ads I can serve you. Now, what podcast is allowing people to do, they're keeping people on the platform for 3 hours. And that in itself is powerful, right? And there's a lot that can be done with it. That's why Joe Rogan got Joe Rogan money, right? Because he has the ability to keep somebody on that platform for 3 hours. Then you have other podcasters that, okay, like, we can crank out hour episodes twice a week. You have it, like, anything that has ability to keep anybody on anything for more than an hour, knowing our natural attention span, is remarkable. And I think Spotify saw that really early and made a huge push to get into that world, right? And they started signing people and podcasters way earlier than others were. Then you started seeing all these other podcast networks come in, like Stitcher, and some of those try to come. When you start seeing those investors and some of those big companies start to come into play and start to go public, that's when you should know that that industry has a potential to really explode. And this is just the infancy of podcasting as a whole. So the sky's the limit.
That's such a great point. Like, I don't even think I could talk to some of my closest friends for 3 hours. And this guy, Joe Rogan, I mean, he's having guest after guest after guest, 2 to 3 hour shows, engaging conversations, and it just keeps going with it. That is, like you said, truly remarkable.
It is a skill that is unmatched. And I remember when podcasting first started, I go, you should listen to Joe Rogan. I'm like, okay, great. I'll go check him out. And I go on there. I'm like, this is 3 hours and 20 minutes, man. Like, I'm like, what? My commute is not 3 hours, right? When do I have time to really listen to it? And then you start listening, and you're like, oh, this is some good dialogue. This is a good conversation, interesting people. And he's really good at it, which is a testament to him. But also, people should know, when you're starting a podcast, you're not going to have that type of success right off the bat.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan's been doing it for like 11, 12 years. And I remember going back and seeing where he started. He was literally in a garage with some of his friends with, kind of just the webcam up, kind of just hanging out. Not that it was supposed to be a comedy thing, and it evolved, right? It pivoted and it started evolving where he's having these longer conversations with people. So he's been doing it for a long time, and he was doing it when the podcast became a thing. And I think in 2007 is when Steve Jobs went ahead and unveiled that and released that. But he's been doing it for quite a while. So yeah.
That's a good point too. And that made me think of when you think of 3 hours and you're like, I don't have 3 hours. And I get caught up in this too. It's like, is somebody really going to sit and listen to me we're at 43 minutes now. And it's like, well, I keep forgetting how I used to listen to podcasts. Like when I was commuting, my commute was only 40 minutes or so. And if I was listening to a 3 hour podcast, clearly you can't get through all that, but I pick it right back up when I get in my car to go home.
Yeah. And
I'll pick it back up the next day. And so it's like, you have to think about it that way. And it's so easy to get. I can see why people stop at episode 7 or don't make it to episode 7, because if you don't enjoy it, one, I think this is so fun. You talked about just being able to learn so much from your guests. And now I'm doing this as like a hobby, and it's so fun. But if you don't find it fun and you're looking at your stats at the beginning and you go into Anchor, I think a couple of mine haven't even gotten into the double-digit plays yet. Like, it's like, certain episodes have like 8 plays, but it doesn't matter. Like, it's, to me, I see what people mean now. Some of the big influencers out there, when they say like don't look at the followers, don't look at the number of views yet. Just keep going, and who knows, it could turn into something. And for me, even if it doesn't, like I'm in the mindset, at least right now, like I don't care. I'm learning so much from you and the other guests I have on here. It's just so much fun.
Yeah. What you said is so right. Don't look at the numbers. Just do it because it is fun. And when have we been able to have a conversation like this in a while, right? It's really good to do that. And I've started to find out that I'm being better. I don't know if I'm saying this right. A better conversationalist, right? Like I'm
Sounds
able
right.
to do it. I'm able to do that a little bit better. I say like a little too much. I say a little too much, and you
That's
hear
a hard
that.
one.
Yeah, right. And I'm trying to get better at it, but there's so many things to gain, and you're having these great conversations with people. You're learning, but the connections, because Jane and I have to reach out to people, right? We have to reach out to people and say, hey, would you be interested? Some people come to us and say, I would love to come on, and you start building these relationships, and you have sometimes these really deep, intimate conversations with people on here, and for the world to see, but you build this connection that people don't really understand until you do it with strangers. We had a person come on the other day on the podcast that we met for the first time, spoke to through this podcast. And we talk to them all the time now, and they have an amazing business. And we're trying out their products. I'm like, this is great. And we talk, and I'm like, hey, next time I'm in New York or something, I would love to see you. I'd love to hang out, get coffee. You build these relationships that are amazing. And it's great to really have and know those people, because when we go back to Wallen Digital, the way it started was sitting in a barbershop talking to somebody and building that relationship. And it's the same thing here. And you never know how those relationships can manifest later down in life. I think we've been around long enough to know, the person that you said hi to or open the door for every day at work can end up being someone that you become really close with and can do a lot of great things with as well. So I think there's so much upside to, creating a podcast and also staying at it and not worrying about the numbers and focusing on the greater things like those relationships.
Yeah, the relationships is so huge. Well, Wallen, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I do want to ask, what is next for Savvy Dialogue? What's next for Wallen Digital in 2021, man? What are the plans?
Yeah. So, Wallen Digital, it's still going to be around. I think moving forward into 2021 and 2022 and beyond, just getting back to the normal routine, right? Getting back to, getting in front of people again, but also thinking about how to explore those marketing relationships that I've created and that type of service that I'm giving, because it's so much. It feels really good being able to do that, and it's a lot more efficient, because now the time that we have to spend doing things is a little bit different now, and I understand how business owners, that's important for them too, efficiency. So being able to think about that, but also we're going to look into documentaries, and that's something that isn't client related or anything like that. But the reason I wanted to do Wallen Digital was to have a little to express myself a little bit more. And when you talk about Savvy Dialogue as well, it's giving knowledge. And I think that documentaries is a great way to do that, to dive into deep, real stories and be able to capture people in the essence of what makes them who they are and what their circumstances are at that time, and being able to share that with people, sharing some really great stories. I think that's next for Wallen Digital and Savvy Dialogue. I think that's a great way to really do up the game a little bit. And that's an expression of me, right? Because I love knowledge, I love people, I love relationships, I love video, right? And I think that would bring a lot of those things together. And Savvy Dialogue, it's fun, right? Like we just talked about how fun it really is, and I have this smile. It's just fun to be able to talk to new people, learn from them. And I love being in audition. Editing an audition is way easier than editing in a Premiere.
God.
Right?
Yes.
So it's way funner. It's better. And being able to continue to do that, and not worrying about scaling or like the numbers.
And real quick, maybe, if there are other gentlemen out there that are getting an idea now, like maybe I should host a podcast with my wife. What's it like hosting a podcast with your wife?
That's a great question. That's a great question, Jeff. It has been interesting, but it's fun at the same time. And I say interesting because this is a space that I grew up in, right? And that's where I got a lot of my training in college. And this is what I'm like. When I talk about it, I know what I'm talking about. And we talked about gear and stuff like that. My wife is not in that space, right? So when I start speaking about these things, I think she's like, okay, that's your thing. Let's find a place here that you take that, right? You take the editing and the podcast part of it and the audio, and I'll handle all the administrative stuff, right? I'll reach out to people. I'll talk to them. I'll get the schedule sent out. And Jeff, you've been a part of that. Like she does a phenomenal job at that. But sometimes if she's not feeling it, she's not feeling it. I got to walk away. She's like, listen, today is not the day. We're not doing the podcast today. Gotta walk away, right? No, but it's been fun. It's been a joy to actually work with her, right? Because it's not like all the other things, and you can carry a lot of those things into your relationship. You realize that you're working with your partner every day anyway, right? So it's just a different means of doing it, but it's been really fun to do that and to see her enjoy the process. And we both have something now that we can share and say, this is a passion of both of ours now. And like, we can do it together. Not very often do you have hobbies that you can do with your spouse, right? I like for the most part, like if somebody's a stamp collector, someone's like a sports memorabilia collector. You can't really intertwine that, and you're able to do that now. So it's been awesome spending more time with her doing that stuff and being able to talk to people and talking about it afterwards at dinner. Like it was so great. It's such a great conversation, but it's been awesome, man. It really has been.
That's great. And Wallen, man, thank you again. It has been so much fun catching up and chatting. I learned a lot of new stuff, and best of luck in the new year. As we record this, we are at December 30th. So yep. Happy New Year, my man. This has been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Happy New Year to you as well. And hopefully I'll come on again, man. Can I be like a recurring guest?
Yes. Maybe we'll start a monthly series in 2021. I like that.
We'll do it. No, it's been a pleasure, man. It was absolutely awesome being able to speak to you.
All right, Wallen, take it easy.